Welcome back to some new malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Every Minute. My work just instituted a new timekeeping policy last week, where we must account for what we are doing every minute of the day, since we are remote and we shouldn't waste company time. My team and I really think this is a waste of our time, as we are now spending 30 minutes a day doing timekeeping instead of working. So we agreed to be as super precise as possible. So all our time cards looked like 8:01 to 8:14, answered emails from blah at place and vendor. 8:15 to 8:21, Pete, washed hands. 8:22 to 8:23, refilled coffee. 8:24 to 8:26, sneeze, got a tissue, and so forth. As of today, we now just have a time entry for unaccounted time that we are supposed to just mark breaks, because I don't need to know when you go to the toilet. And time entries can be rounded to 5-minute increments. A small win, but we'll take it. Yes, we put in the time spent entering set time, which accounted for about 20 minutes. The next story is called Can't Get Water. I work in the boating industry as an engine tech and parts painter. I know, quite a broad range right there. Anyway, the company I work for is quite old, and the building I work in is even older. The heating system is trash, and we really lack anything in the way of air conditioning, and it's boiling outside right now. Earlier today, I started overheating really quickly as the temperature rose in the building. I have a medical condition where my body can't regulate temperature well, meaning I am at risk of passing out. I was going to go get a bottle of water from the fridge to help me cool down when I was stopped by one of the company's managers. Let's call him Kyle. Where are you going? I was only going to get some water. You are supposed to be working right now. You can get the water during the coffee break. I don't think you understand that I can actually be in danger from this heat right now. So, could I please go get one bottle of water? No, you are not authorized to leave your work before the clock strikes. Now shut up and get back to work. Roger that. Keep in mind that this conversation was held in front of my coworkers. I got back to work, making sure to put on some extra coal just to make sure I made up for lost time. Basically, I was forcing my body into shock, and a heat stroke was just around the corner. Fast forward around 30 minutes. I had to tell my coworkers through my strained breath that I don't feel too good, which was actually even worse now, as I was working on deck of one of these boats, give or take 3 meters above the floor. When I made my way towards the ladder to climb down, I only got out a very strained "oh" as I fell off the back and was headed straight for the concrete floor below me. Lucky for me, some coworkers reacted fast enough and managed to catch me. I woke up in an ambulance around an hour later. The EMTs were checking my vitals and were actually helping me. My boss came up to the door and asked me what happened. I told him exactly what happened, and I also told him to check with my coworkers if he didn't believe me. I was brought to the hospital for a checkup, just to make sure I actually didn't suffer any kind of trauma from the fall. A buddy of mine came with me to make sure I got there and back safely. A few hours passed and my buddy got a call. He picked it up, and it was Kyle. My buddy handed me the phone, and I heard Kyle on the other end apologizing for what happened. The short version is that he was heavily reprimanded for what he told me and was put on watch. Didn't lose his position though, so I guess I didn't fully win. But he was liable for the medical compensation for my situation. I did forgive him, and just to rub in a bit, I just had to ask him, am I authorized to get water next time? And my buddy just laughed. The third story is called Student Compliance. In high school, I had an AP English teacher who was very opinionated in her grading. If she loved a book, the class had to read it. If you didn't get a good grade on your report when you turned it in. I was an avid reader. In fact, I cleaned out my school library in 3rd grade. Let's just say I wasn't a fan of her literary selections. She was also the kind of teacher that thought her class was the most important one you had. Due to this, the workload was quite substantial. Coming up on our final exam, she gave the class a talk 1 week before the final. She would be weighing our grade for the semester, giving 60% of it to the final. She explained she was preparing us for college. However, since she was giving so much weight to the final, she would give us an opportunity to earn extra credit. For every 4 lines of the epic poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, you could memorize and write verbatim on the back of the test, you would receive 1 point of extra credit. I had a rough year due to her grading style. I was getting a B in the class at the time. However, this was my moment to shine. I have a knack for remembering things. In fact, as a freshman, I learned all the lines for the lead role of Neil Simmons' Rumors 2 hours before opening night due to the lead dropping out. I then performed the role for 3 nights without dropping a line. So this opportunity seemed made for me, and I wasn't going to let it pass by. I got home and looked up the poem. It was well over 400 lines. I got to work. The final exam finally came. I sat down confidently in my seat and eagerly waited to receive my test. We received our 15-page final and were told we had 3.5 hours to complete it. I put my name at the top and immediately flipped it over to the back. For the next 8 minutes, I ravenously wrote out 400 straight lines from the epic poem verbatim. After that step was complete, I decided to look at the questions she intended for us to answer. It was filled with multiple choice, essays, and fill-in-the-blank questions. I took a few minutes to fill in the blanks I knew, guessed at the multiple choice ones I didn't know, and completely ignored her biased essays. Now for the fun part. After a grueling 15 minutes total into the 3.5 hour final, I walked triumphantly to the teacher's desk. I flipped the test on her desk and said, "Have a great summer." She said, "Very funny, it's a 3.5 hour final. Sit down and finish your test." "No, I'm finished, I got over 100%. Let me see your paper." She looked through my test. She saw the empty essays and empty fill-in-the-blanks. Now even more annoyed with me, she said, "You haven't answered half of these. It's a 3.5 hour final. Sit down and finish your test." "No, I'm finished. I got over 100%. At this point she is getting very upset, and the color on her face is starting to shift. "How do you think you have over 100% when you haven't done half the test?" With a big smile, I said, "Look at the back. You said for every 4 lines of the rhyme of the ancient mariner we memorized and wrote on the back, we would get 1 point of extra credit. You will notice I have written 400 lines from the poem. By my math, this equals 100% of extra credit. Anything I answered in this nonsense is gravy. So I got over 100%. She turned beet red. Her knuckles were right holding my paper, and she stared at me with hate in her eyes. I again said, "Have a great summer," as I walked out. I got an A in the class. My final was 145 out of 100. The last story is called Managing a Micromanager. Back in 2010, I was working in a training management area within a government department. The job was fairly easy for me. When my original supervisor went on extended leave, I got a new supervisor, whom we will call Agatha. Almost immediately, Agatha started to micromanage me, even though she didn't really know my job that well, or even half of what my role entailed. Now, I will say that I didn't particularly like Agatha as a person, but I tried to get along with her, even when her management style started to show. In hindsight, I should have worked some internal politics to be removed from the area, but no one said I was smart at 19. The section started to have some underlying tension, until one day she called me into a meeting. There she said the magic words, "You need to do what I tell you to do, and not what you think you need to do." She even followed it up by emailing me words to the same effect. Now, I did 2 things on the heels of that meeting. Firstly, I printed out the email to keep in my bag, drawer, pocket, and on my wall. Secondly, I started to do what she said, and only what she said. At first, she would just tell me the jobs that needed completing. But she only got worse when she noticed the work wasn't getting done and started to tell me how to do things. Again, I complied and only did exactly what she told me and how she told me to do it. If she missed a step in her instructions, I would either skip it if I could move on or ask her to explain again, as I couldn't figure it out. I was a good employee. I even went out of my way to start asking her what I should be doing and how, after every task. If she wasn't in the area, which was very common, I would just wait for her to come back. If she wanted to micromanage me, I would make her work for it. She was getting nothing done. We were getting further and further behind. This went on for about a month. The reputation of our section was tanking internally and externally. Enter Michelle, Agatha's boss. She noticed all my questions and the general drop in productivity, morale and reputation. She pulled me aside and asked me what was happening, considering I am normally so competent and efficient and don't ask many questions about how to do the work. Michelle was a fantastic boss and generally preferred a more hands-off approach when she could. She clearly was giving Agatha enough rope to either make a ladder or something else. I explained to Michelle how Agatha was managing me, and I was just trying to help her management style by leaning into it. I also showed her Agatha's email. At this point, I estimated I could get everything caught up in about a week without working any extended hours if things changed. Michelle, being a good boss, simply asked what it would take for me to go back to working the way I always have. I only asked to not be managed by Agatha anymore. I could have been much more insidious with my request, but I only wanted to be left alone to do my work. To my surprise, it worked. I immediately started reporting directly to Michelle. I got the work caught up in 3 days, surpassing even my own expectations. As for Agatha, she started to have her work examined a lot more closely, including her overall output, since I found out later she was trying to blame me for her low work output. It turned out that I was in fact the solution. Michelle ended up sharing Agatha's workload between the two of us, and we didn't really notice much difference. Agatha, however, did notice a difference, as she was shuffled into another area of the department, one with a lot less responsibility and a whole lot less promotion opportunity. I ran into Agatha again after I had moved around the country a few times. I ended up back in the same office, but in a different section. Agatha was still in the same bad position. Same level too. Her personal reputation was so bad that only a handful of people would actually work with her. It felt good to know how stuck she was, and presumably still is. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.